Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring the life and work of Aristotle. You probably know him as like a philosopher, but the source material you sent reveals he was much more than that.
Yeah,
Like, did you know that he kind of revolutionized scientific thinking? Like, laid the groundwork for fields like biology and zoology?
it's true. His influence goes like way beyond just the realm of philosophy.
Yeah.
I mean, what's really fascinating is that he was a true polymath,
Yeah.
a pioneer in science, logic, politics, and more.
Yeah, let's start with his background.
Okay.
It seems like he was almost destined for greatness.
Hmm.
I mean, his father was the personal physician to a king. That must have given him incredible access to knowledge and influential people, even as a child.
Absolutely. It's clear that his upbringing played a significant role in like shaping his path.
Yeah.
But what's even more interesting is that Aristotle didn't just follow the like the well-worn path laid out for him.
Yeah.
He forged his own intellectual journey, sometimes even challenging the ideas of his own mentors.
Like during his time at Plato's Academy,
Right.
here he was studying with the leading philosophical mind of his era,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't just accept everything he was taught.
Yeah.
He questioned, observed, and ultimately developed his own way of thinking.
That's a key difference between that's important to understanding Aristotle's legacy.
Okay.
Plato was all about abstract, perfect forms,
Hmm.
ideas that exist beyond our senses.
Mm.
Aristotle, on the other hand, was grounded in the real world. He believed that true knowledge came from studying the world around us.
And this is where his fascination with science really takes off.
Right.
I was so surprised to learn from the source material that he spent time on the island of Lesbos, dissecting squids and classifying marine life. It's not exactly what you picture a philosopher doing, is it?
It's true. And Aristotle's scientific work, it wasn't just a side hobby.
Yeah.
He applied the same rigorous observation and logical thinking to his studies of nature as he did to his philosophical work.
Oh, wow.
He didn't see those disciplines as separate,
Mm-hmm.
They were interconnected pieces of the puzzle of understanding the world.
So we have this brilliant mind who is already challenging philosophical norms, and now he's diving deep into the natural world, and then he
Yeah.
gets tapped to tutor Alexander the Great. Talk about a high-profile gig.
It really is an incredible turn of events.
Yeah.
And it raises an interesting question, like how much did Aristotle's teachings influence Alexander's worldview and his eventual conquests?
Right.
Did he instill in Alexander his own respect for knowledge and Greek culture?
Yeah.
Or perhaps, or perhaps something more?
It's a question for the ages. We may never know the full extent of Aristotle's influence on Alexander,
Yeah.
but what we do know is that he taught him about ethics, politics, and even natural sciences. That's pretty fascinating.
It really speaks to the value that Aristotle placed on education and the pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah.
He wasn't content with just thinking about ideas, in the abstract.
Yeah.
He believed in the power of knowledge to shape leaders, influence society, and ultimately help us understand our world better.
And that leads us to the founding of the Lyceum, Aristotle's own school.
Exactly. And this is another key moment in his story.
Okay.
The Lyceum wasn't just another academy. It represented a deliberate departure from the approach taken by his mentor, Plato.
Okay.
Aristotle emphasized observation, categorization, and logic. It was a space designed to encourage students to think critically, question everything, and base their understanding on evidence.
What I found amazing in the source material is the sheer range of subjects he tackled at the Lyceum: metaphysics, ethics, politics, biology, zoology, physics, logic.
Right.
It's truly mind-boggling. The man clearly had an insatiable curiosity.
He did. And that insatiable curiosity fueled his groundbreaking contributions to formal logic.
Okay.
He developed the concept of the syllogism,
Yeah.
which even today provides a framework for structuring arguments and ensuring their logical soundness.
To be honest with you, I'm not a logic whiz.
Okay.
Can you break down this concept of the syllogism a bit more?
Of course. Think of it as a simple equation for reasoning.
Okay.
It starts with two premises, which are statements assumed to be true.
Right.
And from those two premises, you can draw a conclusion.
Okay.
A classic example would be, all humans are mortal. Socrates is a human, therefore Socrates is mortal.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
So Aristotle essentially provided the building blocks for clear logical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds so simple, but the impact is huge. What other key contributions did he make?
Well, let's not forget his work in metaphysics and ethics.
Okay.
He introduced the idea of substance, which is essentially the underlying reality of things.
Yeah.
And this concept laid the groundwork for centuries of debate about the nature of reality.
Wow.
Even today, philosophers are still grappling with the questions he raised about substance.
And he also explored the idea of virtue ethics, right?
He did. And this is where his ideas on happiness or eudaimonia come in.
Okay.
For Aristotle, happiness wasn't just about fleeting pleasure.
Yeah.
It was about living a virtuous life, one that aligns with reason and allows you to fulfill your potential as a human being.
That really resonates with me. It's not just about feeling good.
Right.
It's about striving to be the best version of yourself.
Exactly.
A concept that is just as relevant today as it was back then.
Exactly. It's a powerful idea that continues to resonate centuries after Aristotle first wrote about it.
Yeah.
But Aristotle's brilliance didn't stop there. Let's delve into his exploration of political philosophy.
Okay.
He had some fascinating insights into how societies are organized and governed.
It sounds like we have a lot more to unpack. So we were just about to get into Aristotle's work on political philosophy.
Right.
It seems like he was really interested in how these abstract ideas actually played out in the real world, especially when it came to how societies were organized and governed.
Absolutely. Aristotle believed that humans are inherently social creatures.
Okay.
He saw the polis, the city-state, as essential for individuals to truly flourish.
Interesting.
He spent a lot of time analyzing different forms of government, from monarchies to democracies, and exploring, both their strengths and weaknesses.
It seems like he wasn't content to just be a philosopher in an ivory tower.
Right.
He wanted to understand how his ideas could be applied to real world situations.
Exactly. And that's a big part of what makes Aristotle so relevant even today.
Yeah.
His work grapples with these fundamental questions about human nature, society, and how we should live our lives. These are timeless questions that we still grapple with today.
It's amazing how he managed to do so much. We've already covered his work in logic, metaphysics, ethics, and politics.
Right.
And let's not forget his scientific contributions, particularly in biology. The source material mentions his extensive research on animal anatomy and classification.
Oh, yeah.
He even dissected marine life.
His dedication to empirical research in biology was truly groundbreaking. He was out there centuries ago, carefully observing and documenting the natural world.
Wow.
He even created a system for classifying animals based on their shared characteristics. This approach laid the groundwork for so much of what we understand about biology today.
It's like he was a scientist trapped in a philosopher's body.
It's true. His work in science really highlights his interdisciplinary approach to knowledge.
Yeah.
And while some of his specific scientific conclusions have been revised, with the benefit of modern science,
Right.
his methodology, his focus on observation, experimentation, and systematic analysis remains incredibly influential.
Okay.
He truly helped shape the way we approach scientific inquiry.
It seems like he didn't see a separation between these different fields of study. For him, they were all connected, different ways of understanding the same world.
You're exactly right. Aristotle saw these disciplines not as isolated fields,
Yeah.
but as interconnected pieces of a larger puzzle.
Right.
And that holistic approach to knowledge is perhaps one of his greatest legacies.
It's an approach we could learn a lot from today. But even geniuses aren't immune to the challenges of life.
True.
The source material mentions some political turmoil in Aristotle's later years. What happened?
Yes, unfortunately, Aristotle's life took a difficult turn after the death of Alexander the Great.
Okay.
Anti-Macedonian sentiment grew in Athens,
Mm-hmm.
and Aristotle, with his close ties to the Macedonian court,
Yeah.
found himself in a dangerous position.
He was essentially forced into exile, wasn't he?
Right.
It seems almost tragic considering everything he contributed to Athenian intellectual life.
It was a difficult period for him.
Yeah.
He fled Athens, famously declaring that he wouldn't let the city sin twice against philosophy.
Wow.
It was a clear reference to the trial and execution of Socrates,
Right.
another great thinker who had been unjustly condemned by the Athenian authorities.
That quote really highlights his deep commitment to philosophy and his frustration with the political climate at the time. But
Yeah.
but even in exile, he continued to work and teach, right?
He did.
Okay.
He found refuge in Chalcis on the island of Euboea,
Hmm.
where he carried on his studies and writings until his death in 322 BC.
So even though his life ended on a somewhat somber note, his legacy lived on.
It did.
And what a legacy it is.
Yeah.
His impact on Western thought is immeasurable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aristotle's writings had a profound influence on scholars across diverse traditions,
Mhm.
Islamic, Jewish, and Christian, throughout the Middle Ages.
Wow.
They shaped both philosophical and theological thought for centuries.
Mm.
And during the Renaissance, his work was rediscovered and sparked a renewed interest in classical learning and scientific inquiry.
It's just amazing to think about how ideas written centuries ago could have such a lasting impact on human history.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the question of why Aristotle still matters today.
Right.
What can we learn from a philosopher who lived over 2,000 years ago?
That's a great question. What do you think? What makes Aristotle so relevant today? That's a great question. What do you think?
Yeah.
What makes Aristotle so relevant today?
I think one key takeaway is Aristotle's emphasis on critical thinking.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to question assumptions, even those put forth by respected figures like Plato.
Right.
He understood that true knowledge comes from careful observation and analysis
Hmm.
and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
That's a valuable lesson for any age.
Yeah, it definitely feels relevant today.
Yeah.
Especially in our world of information overload. We need those critical thinking skills more than ever to sift through everything and figure out what's really true.
Absolutely. And beyond critical thinking, Aristotle offers us a model for approaching knowledge in a holistic way.
Okay.
He didn't see a rigid separation between disciplines like philosophy, science, and politics.
Hmm.
He believed that they were all connected, different facets of the same pursuit of understanding the world.
That's so interesting. I've always thought about those areas of study as being very separate,
Right.
but you're right. It makes sense that they're all interconnected.
And that interdisciplinary approach is becoming even more important today.
Okay.
We're facing complex challenges that require us to draw on knowledge from different fields.
Yeah.
Climate change, for example, is a scientific issue.
Right.
But it also has profound social, political, and economic implications.
So you're saying that Aristotle's approach to knowledge, his emphasis on critical thinking, and his willingness to cross disciplinary boundaries is something we can learn from today.
Precisely. And let's not forget his focus on the big questions. He was grappling with fundamental issues about human nature, society, ethics, and the meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
Those are timeless questions that we're still asking ourselves today.
Yeah, it's almost like we're having a conversation with him across the centuries.
Right.
And that's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. And while we may not agree with all of his conclusions,
Yeah.
his ideas provide a framework for thinking about these enduring challenges.
Hmm.
He reminds us that we're not alone in wrestling with these big questions.
Okay, before we wrap up, I have to ask.
Okay.
The source material painted this picture of Aristotle as someone with an incredible thirst for knowledge,
Yeah.
constantly seeking to understand everything around him. Given that, what do you think he'd be studying and writing about if he were alive today?
That's a fun question to consider.
Hmm.
Knowing his insatiable curiosity and his dedication to understanding the world through observation, I imagine he would be absolutely fascinated by the advancements in modern science,
Yeah.
particularly in fields like genetics, neuroscience, and artificial intelligence.
Imagine Aristotle trying to wrap his head around the concept of artificial intelligence.
Right.
It's almost too much to think about.
I can picture him dissecting algorithms instead of squid.
Right.
But in all seriousness, I think he would be deeply engaged in trying to understand the ethical and philosophical implications of these technologies.
Yeah.
Just as he grappled with the complexities of governance and human nature in his own time.
Exactly. What would Aristotle have to say about social media and the way it shapes our interactions and our understanding of truth,
Right.
or the impact of technology on the environment and the future of our planet?
Those are exactly the kinds of questions I think he'd be asking.
Yeah.
And I imagine he wouldn't shy away from tackling the big political and social issues of our time either.
So, in a way, even though he lived thousands of years ago, Aristotle is still with us, right? The questions he was asking, those fundamental questions about how we should live, how we should govern ourselves, and how we should understand our place in the universe.
Right.
those are still the questions we're grappling with today.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of studying the great thinkers of the past.
Yeah.
They offer us guidance, wisdom, and a sense of continuity in our ongoing quest for knowledge and understanding.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Aristotle. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the life and legacy of this remarkable thinker. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.